Imagine you are getting ready to celebrate a birthday. You expect cake, family, maybe some gifts. Instead, police are walking into a house on a normal Monday afternoon to find a 26-year-old mother and her two babies, just 3 and 4 years old, gone. And the man who is supposed to be blowing out candles is sitting in a jail cell accused of not just wiping out his entire family, but then driving to a city nearby to shoot a total stranger working behind a cash register. 3 innocent lives gone behind closed doors, and 1 taken in broad daylight. Right now, a community is trying to figure out how a family man turns into an accused mass murderer in a matter of hours, and the stakes are life in prison without a chance of ever getting out. This is the terrifying reality that the people we trust the most can sometimes hide the absolute darkest secrets. If you want to help us shed light on these tragic stories, please subscribe to U.S. Crime Cases and turn on those bell notifications today. Because this case is still developing, only limited official images are available right now. More photos and records have not been fully released to the public, so we are using the verified visuals we have. As new information becomes available, we will update the story carefully and respectfully for viewers. Let's sit down and really talk about what happened on June 1st, 2026. Grab a drink, get comfortable, because this is one of those cases that just sits heavy on your chest. It makes you look at your neighbors a little differently. It really makes you double check your locks at night before you go to sleep, right? We are talking about Cheektowaga, New York, and the city right next to it, Buffalo. If you don't know the area, Cheektowaga is this quiet, deeply rooted residential community. It's the kind of place where people actually know each other. You see folks mowing their lawns on the weekends, kids leaving their bikes out on the driveway, neighbors waving across the street. It is absolutely not the kind of place where you expect a quadruple homicide to completely hijack the local news. You just don't expect it. Wow, it just shatters that illusion of safety we all cling to. At the center of all of this is a 29-year-old guy named Saleh Mohamed. On paper, he is checking all the boxes of the American dream. He is a homeowner, he has a young wife, he has 2 little kids. From the outside looking in, this is just a regular, happy family living their lives on Ellen Drive. You imagine their house filled with the sounds of cartoons playing in the background, toys scattered across the living room rug, and the chaotic but beautiful noise of raising 2 toddlers. But we have to debate and really analyze what happens behind closed doors, because whatever was actually happening inside that house, away from the eyes of the neighbors, it reached an unimaginable boiling point on a Monday afternoon. Authorities say Mohamed shot and killed his 26-year-old wife and both of his young kids. I want us to just pause here, just stop for a second and really feel that. I see so many crime stories, but when kids are involved, wow, it's a completely different kind of heartbreak. We talk a lot about crime, but we are talking about a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. These are babies. Think about what a 3-year-old is like. They are just figuring out the world. They are still learning how to talk, how to play. They look up to their dad as their ultimate protector. When they get scared of the dark or when they think there's a monster under the bed, they run to their parents. And instead, the monster was the very person who was supposed to keep them safe. What actually goes through a person's head to do that? I mean, really think about it. You look at your own kids or your nieces and nephews, and the thought of harming them is just physically repulsive. There is a massive debate in the true crime community about cases exactly like this one. Does a person just snap out of nowhere, like a switch flipping in their brain? Or is this something that builds up over months, maybe years of toxic behavior, jealousy, and deep-seated control? I lean toward the latter. People rarely just snap without some kind of warning signs, even if those signs are heavily hidden behind a perfectly manicured lawn and a quiet suburban front door. It breaks my heart to think about what that young mother might have been going through. She was only 26 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She probably spent every waking moment trying to care for those babies, completely unaware that her own home was about to become the most dangerous place on earth. You have to think about her extended family too. The grandparents who were expecting to see those babies grow up, the friends who were probably texting her that very morning, wondering why she wasn't replying. Imagine being on the other end of that phone. You send a text, you wait, you call, and it goes straight to voicemail. You start to get that creeping, sinking feeling in your gut that something isn't right. We've all felt that, right? But in your wildest nightmares, you never imagine that the silence is because they are gone forever. But the nightmare did not stop at the front door of that house on Ellen Drive. And this is where the story shifts. This is where it goes from a horrific, isolated domestic tragedy to a terrifying public threat. After allegedly killing his entire family, police say Mohamed just got in his car and drove to the city of Buffalo. It is a relatively short drive, but I want you to picture that car ride. You have to wonder what on earth he was thinking while his hands were on the steering wheel. Was he in a blind panic? Was his heart racing, realizing what he had just done? Or was he totally, chillingly calm? Was he just stopping at red lights, using his turn signals, blending in with everyone else on the road while carrying the darkest secret imaginable? I see people driving next to me all the time, and I always wonder where they are going. Imagine pulling up next to a guy at a stop sign, completely unaware that he just wiped out his family and is on his way to do it again. Shortly after 2:30 in the afternoon, the Buffalo police get a frantic 911 call. You can only imagine the sheer panic in the caller's voice. There is a shooting at a convenience store on the 1000 block of Grant Street. Officers rush to the scene. Lights, sirens, the whole neighborhood is suddenly ripped out of their ordinary Monday. And when they get there, they find a 43-year-old man who was just working his shift behind the counter. The first responders get there, and they are doing everything they humanly can. They are fighting for this man's life, but it is no use. The trauma is just too severe. The clerk passes away right there inside the store. Now, I want us to really think about that store clerk for a minute. Let's not just treat him as a footnote in someone else's crime spree. He was a 43-year-old man. He probably woke up that morning just like you and me. He drank his coffee, maybe tied his shoes, put on his work shirt, and went to his job expecting a completely ordinary, boring Monday. He was just trying to earn a paycheck. He was just trying to live his life. You know how it is when you work retail or at a convenience store. You see hundreds of faces a day. The bell rings on the door, someone walks in, you say hello. He had absolutely no idea that a man who had allegedly just wiped out his entire bloodline was going to walk through those glass doors. The sheer randomness of it is what makes it so deeply unsettling. We really have to ask ourselves, why him? Why this specific store? Why this specific clerk? Was it just a random act of violence from a guy whose mind had completely fractured? Like, did Mohamed just pull over at the first store he saw because he wanted to keep hurting people? Or did he know this clerk? Did they have some kind of history? That is the burning question that is keeping people in Buffalo awake at night right now. If it's random, it means any of us could be in the wrong place at the wrong time. If it's targeted, it adds a whole new layer of mystery to a case that is already almost too dark to comprehend. I see people trying to rationalize this online all the time, but the truth is there is no rationalizing the irrational. There is no logical explanation for looking at a 43-year-old stranger behind a counter and deciding his life needs to end today. When you look at the entirety of what happened in those few hours, it is a staggering amount of loss. 4 people, 4 individual lives with dreams, favorite foods, friends, and futures, all erased. The community is left reeling, completely blindsided. Because when something like this happens, it doesn't just affect the immediate victims. It sends this massive shockwave through the entire town. The neighbors who lived next door to the family are never going to look at that house the same way again. The people who bought their morning coffee at that convenience store are going to feel a chill every time they walk through the door. It changes the very fabric of the community. You know, we sit here and we talk about these cases, and it's so easy to get caught up in the timeline and then the police work and the courtroom drama, and we will definitely get to all of that. But right now, in this moment, we just need to hold space for that 26-year-old mother. We need to hold space for those 2 beautiful little toddlers who never got the chance to grow up. And we need to hold space for a 43-year-old man who was just doing his job. It's cases like this that really force you to hug your loved ones a little tighter. It forces you to realize how fragile everything really is. While the police over in Buffalo are taping off a convenience store and trying to figure out why someone would murder a hardworking clerk on a Monday afternoon, the clock is ticking back in Cheektowaga. It is about an hour later, creeping up on 3:30 p.m. Think about what a normal 3:30 looks like in a suburban neighborhood like that. The school buses are starting to drop kids off. People are wrapping up their work shifts, thinking about what they are going to make for dinner. The neighborhood is just waking up for the evening. But for the relatives of this young family, the afternoon is slowly turning into an absolute nightmare. They are getting really, really worried. They are calling the house on Ellen Drive. They are sending text messages. Hey, are you there? Call me back. Is everything okay? And nobody is answering. The wife isn't picking up her cell phone. Mohamed isn't picking up his. You know that feeling, right? We all have people in our lives who always have their phones in their hands. When a family member goes completely silent, especially a mother with 2 little kids, your stomach just drops. Usually you try your hardest to talk yourself out of it. You try to be rational. You say to yourself, oh, they're probably just taking a nap. Or she probably took the kids to the park and left her phone on the kitchen counter. But when you get that deep, nagging, heavy gut feeling that something is genuinely wrong, you are usually right. Your intuition knows before your brain catches up. They finally make the call that absolutely nobody ever wants to make about their own family. They call the local police and ask for a welfare check. Now, if you know any police officers or dispatchers, they will tell you that they do welfare checks all the time. It is a massive, routine part of their day-to-day job. Usually, the person is just in the shower, or their phone died and they didn't realize it, or maybe they are just having a bad day and ignoring their calls to get some peace and quiet. It's almost always a completely harmless false alarm. The cops knock on the door, someone answers in their sweatpants looking confused, and everyone goes on about their day. So when the Cheektowaga police pulled up to that quiet, well-kept house on Ellen Drive, they were probably expecting the exact same thing, just another routine knock and talk. But when they walked inside that house, they didn't find a false alarm. They walked into a literal nightmare. Wow, it is just so hard to even talk about. They found the bodies of that 26-year-old mother and her 2 little kids, just right there in the very home where they were supposed to be the safest, surrounded by their toys and their belongings. If you haven't subscribed to U.S. Crime Cases yet, please hit that subscribe button now to help us share these stories and seek justice together. The Buffalo Police Chief of Detectives, Joe Langdon, actually spoke to the media about this specific moment later on, and you could just tell it deeply messed him up. He is a seasoned investigator, a guy who has seen it all lay, but he looked incredibly shaken. He talked openly and honestly about the heavy emotional toll this took on the cops who had to walk through that front door. I mean, let's think about it for a second. Police officers see terrible, ugly things every single day of their careers. They see horrific car crashes. They deal with violent, bloody assaults. They respond to tragic drug overdoses. Over time, they have to build up this incredibly thick skin just to survive the job. They have to put their emotions in a box so they can do their paperwork and go home to their own families. But you never, ever build a thick skin for dead children. You just don't. I see cops talk about this all the time. A scene like that completely breaks the box. It shatters whatever mental armor you put on when you pin that badge to your chest. It stays with you when you close your eyes at night. You remember the smell of the house. You remember the silence where there should be kids playing. It is so incredibly important that we recognize the severe, lasting trauma that those first responders have to carry with them for the rest of their lives. They had to process a crime scene involving the violent, senseless deaths of innocent babies. But here is the craziest, most unsettling part of the entire timeline. As police are swarming the house, taping off the yard, and trying to process the horror inside, Mohamed was actually arrested shortly after returning to the house. I see you shaking your head. Right? It is baffling. He actually came back. He allegedly wiped out his family, drove to the city of Buffalo, shot a store clerk in the chest, and then just drove his car right back to his own street on Ellen Drive. Why do killers do that? We see it so often in psychology and criminal behavior, and it never makes any logical sense to a normal, empathetic person. Sometimes they come back to the scene of the crime to see what the police are doing, to blend into the crowd of shocked neighbors and feel a sick, twisted sense of power watching the chaos they created. Sometimes they come back because they are in a massive state of psychological shock. Their brain has completely short-circuited and they literally just default to driving home because muscle memory takes over and they don't know where else to go. Or maybe on some deep subconscious level, he wanted to get caught. The adrenaline wore off, the brutal reality of what he had just done set in, and he just went back to face the music. We can debate his exact mindset all day long, but the cold, hard fact is the police got their hands on him right there in front of the house. There was no intense, high-speed chase down the highway. There was no massive, multi-state manhunt. He just showed up, and they put the handcuffs on him right there in the neighborhood. At this exact moment, you have two completely different police departments, Buffalo and Cheektowaga, working two incredibly bloody, chaotic murder scenes. On the surface, a domestic homicide in the quiet suburbs and a convenience store shooting in the busy city look like two totally separate, unrelated tragedies. But cops talk to each other. Neighboring jurisdictions communicate quickly, especially when major violent crimes happen within just an hour or two of each other. It really didn't take long for the investigators to put two and two together. They looked at the property records and confirmed that Mohamed was the legal owner of the house on Ellen Drive. Then they looked at the suspect description, the vehicle information, and whatever security footage they were pulling from the convenience store on Grant Street. The puzzle pieces just snapped together so incredibly fast. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a gang war. One man, two locations, 4 dead bodies. Wow. Just saying it out loud makes it feel even heavier. This was the exact moment the entire community realized what they were actually dealing with. And this realization changes absolutely everything. It wasn't a random, tragic robbery gone wrong over in Buffalo that you just read about in the morning paper. And it wasn't just a deeply isolated, private domestic issue locked away behind the closed doors of a Cheektowaga home. It was a violent, unpredictable spree. When violence spills out of a private home and bleeds into the public streets, it fundamentally changes how a whole city feels. The people who regularly shop at that convenience store, who buy their lottery tickets and their morning coffee there, their sense of safety is just completely gone. They realize they could have been standing at that counter. And the people who live on Ellen Drive, who wave to each other while checking the mail or walking their dogs, they realize a monster was living right next door, sharing their property line. The psychological impact of that is just huge. You start wondering if you really know anybody at all. If the friendly guy waving at you from his driveway could be capable of doing something so unimaginably dark to his own flesh and blood, who can you actually trust? It leaves a permanent scar on the neighborhood. So you have this neighborhood permanently changed, people locking their doors, looking over their shoulders, trying to process the fact that a father just destroyed his entire world. And while the community is trying to catch its breath, the legal system immediately kicks into gear. The wheels of justice start turning fast. The very next day, Saleh Mohamed was taken out of his holding cell and brought downtown to Buffalo City Court to face a judge. You know how it goes in a courtroom. It is cold, it is sterile, the lights are bright, and everything is very formal. But there is a detail about this specific arraignment that is just incredibly dark. It really messes with your head when you think about it. The day he stood in that courtroom, wearing that standard issue orange jail jumpsuit with his hands cuffed, listening to a judge read off charges for wiping out his entire family and a total stranger, it was his 29th birthday. Wow. Just let that sink in for a minute. You think about what a 29th birthday is supposed to look like. You are supposed to be out to dinner with your wife. You are supposed to be opening messy, hand-drawn cards from your 3-year-old and 4-year-old. You are supposed to be blowing out candles and eating cake in your kitchen. Instead, he is standing in front of a magistrate, surrounded by armed court officers, facing the absolute heaviest charges the state of New York can throw at a human being. He was officially charged with first-degree murder and multiple counts of second-degree murder. When the arraignment was over, the Erie County District Attorney, a man named Mike Keene, stepped up to the microphones to address the local media. District attorneys are usually very calculated. They use very clinical, legal language. They don't want to jeopardize the case. But Keene did not hold back at all. You could see the anger and the disgust on his face. He made it crystal clear right out of the gate that these two horrific events, the massacre in the Cheektowaga house and the shooting at the Buffalo convenience store, were tied together by this one man. He looked right at the crowd of reporters and called Mohamed the worst of the worst. Right. I mean, think about the weight of those words. That is incredibly heavy coming from a guy who prosecutes murderers, gang members, and violent criminals for a living. He sees the absolute worst of humanity every single day, and even he was shaken by the sheer brutality of this. The DA went on to say that Mohamed is looking at a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. There are no plea deals on the table for something like this. There is no good behavior clause. There is no getting out when he is old and gray to live out his final years in a halfway house. If he is convicted, it means a concrete box for the rest of his natural life. He will never walk the streets again. But as the legal process officially starts, as the defense attorneys step in and the prosecutors start building their massive files, we have to talk about the why. That is the question that haunts everyone. Investigators are still digging around the clock to find the exact motive. They are pulling his phone records, searching his computers, digging through his bank statements, and interviewing anyone who ever knew him. Did he recently lose his job and just snap under the financial pressure? Were he and his young wife having severe marriage problems? Was she threatening to leave him and take the kids? Was there a long, dark history of control and emotional abuse in that house that absolutely nobody else knew about? And then, of course, there is the biggest, most terrifying mystery of all. What on earth was the connection to the store clerk? I see people debating this constantly. If it was completely random, that is almost too scary to think about. It means Mohamed left his house with a gun, covered in the guilt of what he just did to his family, and just wanted to keep hurting people. It means the clerk was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, simply because he was standing behind a cash register when a monster walked through the front door. But if it wasn't random, if they somehow knew each other, it changes the entire narrative of the story. It means there was a very specific, calculated reason he got in his car and drove from his quiet suburban street to that exact store on Grant Street. Did they get into an argument a week ago? Did Mohamed think this clerk had something to do with his wife? We don't have that answer yet. The police are keeping those details locked up tight, but it is the one piece of the puzzle that everyone in Buffalo is desperately waiting for. What we do know, without a shadow of a doubt, is that this case is a massive, blaring wake-up call about domestic violence. We see these tragedies on the news and we think they happen overnight. But cases like this rarely, if ever, start with murder. They don't start with a gun. They usually start with much smaller, quieter things. It starts with jealousy. It starts with a partner checking your text messages or demanding the passwords to your social media accounts. Then it slowly escalates to controlling the money, telling you what you can and cannot buy. Then comes the isolation. They start driving a wedge between you and your sister or you and your best friend until you feel like they are the only person in the world you can rely on. It is psychological warfare, and it is designed to trap the victim. We really have to be aware of these red flags, not just in our own personal lives, but in the lives of our friends and family members. If you have a friend who suddenly stops coming around or who seems terrified to upset their husband, you have to pay attention. Sometimes people are just too scared to ask for help. Or worse, they are so deep in the cycle of emotional abuse that they don't even realize how much physical danger they are actually in until it is way too late. They think he's just stressed, or he would never actually hurt the kids. Local officials and domestic violence advocates are using this awful, heart-wrenching tragedy to push a message out to the public, and it is a message we absolutely need to amplify right here. If you or someone you know is dealing with an abusive situation at home, you have to reach out. I know it is terrifying. I know leaving is statistically the most dangerous time for an abuse victim, but you cannot stay. In Erie County, they have an incredible program called the Be Safe program that is specifically designed to help people escape these exact situations safely. But it doesn't matter where you live. No matter what city or state you are in, there are local hotlines, there are secure shelters, and there are trained professionals who want to help you get out alive. You just have to make the call. This Cheektowaga case is going to be tied up in the court system for a very, very long time. There will be preliminary hearings, motion hearings, and eventually a highly publicized trial. The community is going to have to look at the evidence. The surviving family members are going to have to sit in a courtroom and listen to heartbreaking testimonies. They are going to have to look at the man who destroyed their lives. It is going to drag the trauma out for years. But at the end of the day, when the gavels bang and the news cameras finally pack up and go home, we are left with the coldest reality of all. 4 people are never coming back. A 26-year-old mother who loved her babies, 2 innocent children who never even got to go to kindergarten, and a hardworking 43-year-old man who was just trying to make a living at a store. We have to talk about this. We have to sit here and analyze it, even when it makes our stomachs turn. Because by understanding how these tragedies happen, by pulling them apart and looking at the red flags, maybe, just maybe, we can see the signs in time and stop the next one from ever happening. Thank you so much for staying till the end. Please subscribe to U.S. Crime Cases to help us share these important stories and seek justice.